Okay, welcome everyone to this online session at Europeana 2025. Thank you very much for joining us. My name is Adrian Murphy. I'll be the host for this session, and my colleague Marika will be managing the chat. There are some housekeeping messages which Marika will add to the chat imminently. If you've joined us before, you'll have seen these already, but if it's your first session, then please take some time to read those. We will also be sharing the Europeana Inclusive Engagement Guidelines. You may have seen these already, but if you haven't done so, please take a moment to read them or read again to familiarize yourself with them. The link will also be shared in the chat as well to those. And we also encourage you to share your thoughts on social media using the following hashtags: Europeana 2025, cultural heritage, and reuse digital heritage. So if there's anything you would like to flag or talk about with Marika or I, please do send us a direct message. Otherwise, let's start today's session. So this session is entitled Designing for Communities and Users. We have two speakers, Anne-Sophie Radermecker from the Université Libre de Bruxelles and Daniel Llamas from ID. So we will start with Anne-Sophie. And Anne-Sophie, over to you, and you can share your screen.
Thank you very much. All right, so thank you very much and good afternoon to everyone. I'm very pleased to be part of this session. The presentation I'm gonna make today is a presentation of a very preliminary project. I want to emphasize this, which is part of a bigger research project, which I will also introduce in a moment. So very, very preliminary. So I'm basically here testing a little bit the idea with the heritage community, but also the more digital sector community. So any tips, any suggestions, any remarks will be most than welcome to potentially concretize this project, which is about here the potential of a community-shared and AI-supported app for valuing and safeguarding informal cultural goods and related expertise. To start first, I'm going to briefly give you some context about this project. As I said, it is part of a larger research project funded by the European Research Council, so an ERC starting grant. The project is entitled MOVA, Making Old Object Valuable Again, the Cultural and Economic Challenges and Sustainability Opportunities of Ordinary Antique in the 21st Century. You have the website if you are curious about this project. And basically, we are a team of 3 PhD candidates, 2 postdocs, looking at a very particular types of cultural goods, which are ordinary antiques, goods which are at the intersection of commodities, cultural goods, as I said, but also decorative arts. And these objects are those that you can find basically everywhere online, on online sales platforms, that you can find at the local antique dealers, that you can find at local auction houses, but also at flea markets. And these objects are imbued with a set of values ranging from an aesthetic value, cultural value, an historical value, material value, a strong use value as well, and therefore also occupy this very particular position within the field of heritage. In some contexts, they are not even recognized as cultural goods or heritage goods. In some others, people are more willing to encompass or to consider this object as part of heritage. And this project is approach from different disciplines. I'm not entering here in the details, but heritage studies, economics, but also consumer research and marketing studies. But today I'm going to focus more on the heritage aspects. And this project is well anchored, or at least is in the continuity of the Faro Convention 2005, with this growing attention paid to more informal forms of heritage. Here I'm using a Barrère designation, everyday heritage, following Ireland et al. And we are trying to develop this idea of liminal heritage. So basically cultural goods which are really at the intersection again of living heritage commodities that are still consumed, but also again bearing all this value that could make them eligible to really a status of heritage goods. And These goods have another characteristics. They tend to be on the margins of more official types of heritage, but also on the margins of institutions, including museums, including other cultural organizations, but also academic institutions. There are very, very few publications on these goods. For most of them, very few information available. And as a result, yeah, these goods are for the vast majority quite underdocumented, although being part of our heritage. However, despite this lack of documentation, we see that they are associated with knowledge, obviously, and know-how about where they were produced, when they were produced, how they were used, and how they can be used today. Also some information about possible restoration practices or preservation practices on these objects that remain at this stage quite equally quite under-documented. And by looking at this notion of informal heritage goods, inevitably one question that arose was, okay, to what extent these goods are also associated with more informal practices in terms of expertise, or also management practice, cultural management practices, basically the practices that we can find more within communities, knowledge communities, and communities of practices. We've been exploring all this, obviously, throughout the project, which is also at its early stage. We are ending gradually the second years. It's a project running over 5 years. But we have observed that this expertise, this information exists, it's available. And the point here of this app project is to see how we can capture, in a way, and leverage also this informal expertise and these informal heritage management practices at the benefit of citizens, at the benefit of public institutions, and also, of course, at the benefits of the object themselves. It's obviously not a new issue in the sense that how to preserve, or at least inventory, that kind of everyday, informal, more modest type of heritage has been addressed in prior research. Here I'm citing mostly Natalie Hennick's books on the construction of heritage, where she shows clearly that in France, for instance, with the Ministry of Culture, they have this national inventory where the goal is not to preserve, because we cannot preserve everything, obviously, but to list, to inventory everyday heritage with still a traditional top-down approach, let's say, with experts going to the most rural areas and identifying what everyday object could be worth bear a cultural value and therefore appear on this kind of list, but in a very traditional way, with, again, the need of having people going to the places and inventorying everything, just providing the most basic type of information on the goods, and that's it, with no official conservation or preservation measure in this case. That's what's happening in some countries. In Belgium, for instance, we have, at least in the French-speaking part, not this necessarily interest in this kind of informal heritage. But in parallel to this, we have seen, of course, the emergence and the proliferation even of platforms for knowledge sharing, including social media. And very briefly here, I'm reporting the result of a small research I conducted, which should be published in the Journal of Cultural Economics in a few weeks, which I entitled Co-Ownership from Below, and which consisted of examining these social media groups where you have like-minded enthusiasts that discuss and try to authenticate unattributed artworks or, quite unknown, let's say, cultural goods. So we are really here in what we could consider, not pejoratively at all, but the low end of the cultural sector, of the art world, let's say. And what was really interesting by examining all this discussion is to observe that the types of conversation, the types of discussion, in many cases echo that we can find in more official setting, in an official context where experts provide expertise. We used a series of techniques to analyze these social media engagement towards the object. And we see that several users, several members really act as gatekeepers. They discriminate goods of varying quality. They provide information and in authenticating and valuing these lower end works of art and cultural goods. And interestingly, this body of knowledge that is shared on social media is taken over by people from the art market, with auction house seeking for objects, but also capitalizing on the freely shared knowledge available on these groups. And to make it short, what is interesting with this group is that it acts like a first screening step, let's say, within the low-end art world and low-end cultural goods sector, let's say, to dissociate what can be considered junk and what can be viewed as cultural goods. So this information is there and is currently observable on these social media. And being interested in documenting and analyzing also and preserving also these, valuing these objects, came the idea of creating an app that could, again, leverage this, what we're going to call this kind of informal expertise. At this stage, as I said, it's a very preliminary project, but the idea is to conceive a prototype based on a case study to start with. In this case, it would be this crystal manufacturer that you may know, the Val Saint-Lambert. It's based in Belgium, and they've been involved and are still involved actually in the production of glassware, crystal glassware of all kinds, chandelier, vases, glasses, and so on and so forth, with a production that is considered with fine glassware, but also more affordable, more common types of crystalware, although in any event, it remained crystal. So these goods in the past were also bought as luxuries in certain socio-economic strata. And the idea is to really focus on this production center and the related objects. They also have impressive archives with the catalogs that they produced over time, which is also a very consistent source of information to feed also this app. I'm not detailing here the different stages of developing an app. It's quite basic, but the idea is on this project to really gather all stakeholders related to the Val Saint-Lambert crystal manufacturer, including the manufacturer itself. There is a local glass museum that preserves some of the best pieces and has also some archives. There is also, interestingly, the Corning Museum of Glass in New York State in the US that, own many pieces of this production. And we have also, interestingly, this community of owners with people who just own this object after having inherited from this object from previous generation, but also a strong community of collectors, so people who are really invested in the collection, the acquisition of these pieces, this specific production. Now, obviously, creating an app is nothing but new, especially in the cultural and creative sectors. We know there are many apps that exist already with different purposes. Could that be education? Could that be tourism? Could that be also community engagement? And we probably all know some of these examples. To the best of our knowledge, we feel that concerning this type of less recognized heritage, informal heritage, there is still a gap to fill, while many of the apps are actually concerned with recognized types of heritage. But of course, if you have any suggestions or if you have tried or viewed other similar apps, please let us know, because we are obviously interested to do some benchmark when it comes to that specific type of object. Bearing in mind that when inventorying that kind of object, there are also many apps for a collection and for collectors, from which we could also get some inspiration, but they remain really basic in their use as tools. So the basic idea of this app is as such. So there will be, and I will develop briefly each of them: identification, valuation, knowledge and know-how sharing, and then promotion. So based on the production I just mentioned before. The first stage would be identification. So, and this is also basically based on the model of what we could observe in on social media. So the idea is to allow any users to upload a photo of their belonging of the glass and to provide or to seek some information. So they could provide using a system of structured information, basic information about the good if they know it, or to seek also information, which is usually most of the time why people use social media, is to get information about the goods they own. And for this, obviously, we could use basic AI integration, including image recognition, as it is already the case on other software and platforms, as you know, Google Lens, for instance. It's also, of course, in use in other apps dedicated to wine, for instance, by scanning wine stickers or plants, flowers. We see this kind of AI-based image recognition. We see it quite often. The idea could be to train also this AI on the very rich, as I said, archives of catalogs that the Val-Saint-Lambert owns, with very formal pictures and images from the catalogs to discriminate basically what could fall within this production and what is not, because this production had also many emulate and derivatives from other production center, and it would be a way to provide some gatekeeping around the production by basing and by training also the AI on the official production. And on this basis, we may expect AI-generated information, very basic factual information at this stage. Could that be the size, the colors, maybe the model that was used, and also to help the owner to understand whether the piece is a more common piece or is it a more exclusive, for example, production of this crystal manufacturer. So quite a basic use at this stage, but basically identification. And we could try also to train the AI to also refine the results as much as information is provided, considering that several very similar goods could be uploaded. To provide, as I said, additional information about maybe patterns, materials, craftsmanship, perhaps origin, styles, estimated age as well, and to capitalize on the supplied information. In a second stage, there is the question of valuation and economic insight. With the kind of goods we are talking about, and I know it might be controversial in other contexts, heritage context, but these objects have the particularity to be living cultural goods. They are still traded. So I think providing also this service of valuing the goods and estimates around the goods might be something interesting and to incorporate in this app. It's really living heritage that continue to be consumed. Of course, the valuation is not only about the economic valuation, but also the cultural valuation with the app. And we'll see in the next step, the community engagement. The owner could better know whether the good has some cultural value, maybe some of them having higher value than others. And then also, regarding prices, it would be possible to provide some estimates based on the other database and online platforms that exist currently. It's a big change, I think, especially after the pandemics. We have now witnessed the proliferation of online sales platforms where people can send antiques as private retailers, but also more official antique dealers and auction houses. So having estimates of these goods is something that is way more accessible today than it used to be in the past, where usually these goods were exchanged in more informal setting, like flea markets. Now there is really the possibility of providing that kind of information by comparing. And the idea would be also, depending on the available information, to adjust also the estimates, bearing in mind that if you can bring some provenance on the object, usually we see that with that production having or coming from the family of crystal glass blowers, so craftsmen, tends to increase the value of these objects. So all this could be weighted in the estimate. And also the idea is to potentially connect art, Val-Saint-Lambert enthusiasts together, possibly to consider a sales or an exchanges. Then we have the second point, which is the third point, sorry, knowledge sharing and community engagement. What we could expect from AI for this app is, as I said, the provision, the supply of very formal factual information about the visual material characteristics of the goods. But we know that with this object that for most of them fall within the category of antiques, ordinary antiques, other pieces of information are very important, like the personal histories associated with the object, how and where they were acquired, the way they were used. If we have the chance today to still have a production in very good conditions, it's also linked to the fact that they were carefully preserved by the previous generation, only used on special occasions. So here, the idea is to involve also the community of users, the community of owner, to share this kind of information, possibly additional documents or archive they may have in relation to this production, press article, for instance, or so, and to gather also the kind of know associated of this object, how they are used, how people take care of this object, how they potentially restore this object, and also how they can use and eventually reuse this object through an adaptive reuse strategy. So some objects can be, their original function can be turned into another one to still make them relevant today. So the community could here intervene, also to potentially correct or to adjust the information supplied by the owners and by the AI. That's also the idea. And what we see within these communities that usually they tend to mitigate information, because of course one argument here is that we never know that whether the information supplied will be 100% credible and reliable, which is indeed a potential pitfall. But what we can see on social media is that the community tend to mitigate this information by bringing additional information or counteracting some statement made by other users. And at the end, we see that we cannot argue that the information is 100% correct, but at least it's mitigated. And also when we deal with that kind of goods, basically it's a question we may wonder, unlike more official types of heritage, to what extent this reliability of information is as important as is the case in other, or at least for other types of cultural or heritage goods. Here, we could also use AI to curate or to rank the most reliable sources, to also discriminate between really a contribution that really help understanding the object versus more anecdotal or unrelated comments. We could use it also for transcription and translation when needed. And what we also see on social media is that there are, of course, some users and members which are way more engaged than others. And valuing this expertise can also be an option through gamification, for instance, having a ranking or rating or user badges, for instance, could help also the community to feel value through sharing this kind of knowledge, and then continue to keep provide information and supply information on these goods. In a fourth stage, the idea would also be to use this app to promote and give visibility to this kind of informal heritage through various options. It could be, for instance, of course, valuing again these goods and the knowledge, the associated knowledge. But for example, there could be the possibility for the users to share events like exhibitions, sales, documentaries, or anything that is in relation with that kind of object, to create also some emulation within the community and in the valuation of this object. And yeah, there will be there are also some other opportunities, and we may also expect through this app to see very common pieces to come regularly, but also sometimes maybe more exceptional pieces to appear, and then that could be also spotlighted through the app. I'm not going to discuss, because this is what I mostly discuss now from the user perspective, but now I try to see, what could be the potential of such app also for more public institutions, considering again that, of course, the content of app that would be transposed into a cloud-based broader platforms could be an option. But I think for many cultural heritage or institutions, really paying attention to this object is for most quite difficult for staff reasons, for resources, financial resources reasons, and also in terms of priorities, especially when you focus on more official forms of heritage. Here, the interest is to really retrieve the information from the communities, from the field, from those who basically own also the knowledge and the information on these goods. So there is the data collection, almost in a self-generated way, which can be interesting, and that also overcome the very traditional system of listing or inventories that eventually are not even accessible to the broader audience. It's also a nice way, perhaps, to identify where expertise is on these objects, where the skills are in terms of restoration and also where the collection, where the pieces are. All of this, of course, will have to be in line with the GDPR, but it's a way really to identify this community of knowledge, to centralize to a certain extent, and then by centralizing to see what can be useful for more official heritage institution. These materials could be also valuable for more academic, scholarly research in collaboration with the communities, and more broadly as a way to, again, value more local, formal types of heritage and related now in a more participatory bottom-up approach. So as I said, very preliminary, but we view this as a logical development of the DRC project. We can take alternative form, and we are really testing the idea so far. We cannot preserve everything for sure. The idea is more to really empower those who know, those who own the knowledge in the knowledge transmission and the knowledge sharing for private people, but also for public institutions. I haven't, of course, identified this or discussed that in depth, but it goes with it lots of challenges, especially if you need to open that kind of up to all antiques or more antiques. It can be extremely messy. So that's why we need to start with a prototype that is very focused to see to what extent it works. We need to have the community adhesions, which can be also challenging. Bear in mind that the people who want that kind of object belong usually to older generation. There is the typical, of course, digital divide, and that may also occur in this case. The technical efficiency is also important, and also the gatekeeper that we can also play, in this process to avoid also unrelated information or unrelated object to be included in the discussions. So yes, and I think broadly it allows us to really reflect on the specificities of this heritage and what can we do with informal heritage, liminal heritage in comparison to more official forms, something that an app could allow or permit more easily than for more official types of heritage. So yeah, I'm more than happy to receive your questions or comments or suggestions after. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Anne-Sophie. Merci beaucoup. We'll now move on to our next speaker, but in the meantime, if anyone has any questions for Anne-Sophie, please do add those to the chat or the Q&A, and we will come to them at the end. So our next speaker is Daniel Llamas, and he's going to talk to us about Built with Bits. So over to you, Daniel.
So today I have been invited here, thank you for that, to talk about Build with Bits. This is a project I am coordinating right now, and it's an original initiative of Europeana Foundation along with the ID community I am part of. So first of all, I just wanted to give you some context, some background about how this started and how we celebrated different editions during these 4 years. So as I said, I'm Daniel Llamas, and I work in this intersection between social impact, cultural, education, technology. I am, along with my teammate David, we are the coordinators of AIDI, that is a non-profit association. We call it community, based in Madrid, and with the area of action in Spain, but also in other countries sometimes. And especially we work with public institutions. With the goal of going along with them when they want to innovate in something related with participation, citizen participation, for example, when they want to engage their communities in their own processes, or on changing their structures, or in creating new events, formats, training, whatever. So we started this project 4 years ago, having this conversation with Europeana. Now our person is Christine, who has been taking care of the program during this last year. But also we have different people joining as a team for these editions. So this origin actually started, let me share, because Build with Bits, we define it as an international experience that happens online where a group of different participants learn how to design social virtual environments where they can generate some kind of positive impact. And with positive impact, we mean either related with some local issues, or related with digital culture, or related with education, okay? Like these three main topics. First of all, I want to share with you some examples of what I mean with social virtual environment, because maybe it's like a term not very used to everyone. And maybe if you can watch it through these animations, it's like easier to understand, because throughout these 4 editions, we have created, or better said, the people participating have created already 32 different virtual environments. And virtual environments are a kind of virtual space that happens 3D. For example, we are having this conversation here in a video call, and it's 2D because we are seeing each other with the screens and with the video. But here you have the possibility to walk through the space and have access to different features depending on the software that you use to create them. For example, you can walk through the scene, you can grab objects, pick up 3D objects, you can also meet other people inside and speak with them, also with video, but also with avatars, and you can even use those avatars in an interactive way. You can also, I don't know, like read PDF files, you can watch videos, insert different kind of animations. You have a lot of possibilities. And as I said, it depends on the kind of tool, the kind of platform that you use to create the spaces. Some of them are like more basic, like a template that you can use and place just some assets inside. And some of them allow also to change the architecture of the space and be totally creative with the space, and have a lot of even gaming experiences inside the space. So these are real examples from Build with Bits, and I will explain some of them in a minute. But now I want to explain how this came up in the beginning, because when we started this conversation with Europeana, as you all know, Europeana has a repository with a lot of assets, a lot of items of virtual and digitalized heritage, but most of them are 2D pictures or scans, but they also have a lot of 3D models. Sometimes these 3D models are a bit overlooked when we're talking about education, for example. Not many people are using those 3D models, and we wanted to create some kind of format or program or something where those 3D assets can be used in a use and reuse in a proper way. Also, as my partner David is an expert on technological mediation, and I will explain later what I mean with that. We also wanted to work with technology, but in a different way, not just using technology for the sake of it, but in a critical way, and also allowing this democratization of the platform and the creation of the 3D models, the virtual spaces. And this is very related with this no-code or low-code movement, because you don't need any knowledge on or expertise in, for example, architecture or industrial design or 3D software to create these spaces. So this is something that we wanted to include in the program. And also we started the initiative thinking on this mindset of the new European Bauhaus that happened some years ago, very concerned about sustainability, the possibility to connect this with social problems or social issues of different communities. And with these 3 elements, we started to think of something that could work. But at first, we also had in mind like the different audiences that we wanted to involve. in the program. First of them is obviously the cheese institution, like the cultural heritage institutions, but also any other kind of institutions like museums or different departments of municipalities, NGOs, of other organizations that are very connected with the virtual heritage. Also educators and students, but other kind of institutions related with education, like universities or non-formal educational institutions as well, higher schools in different places. So we were sure about these two audiences at first, but we also came up with the idea of involving these other two in the right, that are like experts and professionals, people that are very techy, or they know how to use these tools, and they feel confident when using the tools, but they are used to creating things maybe with other kind of focus, more, for example, more related with leisure or with exhibitions of other kind, but not so connected with the social impact. So they feel that they can help through these new uses of the technology that they already know. And also, finally, the citizenship in general, like open citizenship, any person with curiosity and willingness to help with the creation of the spaces and providing feedback or whatever. So we came up with this structure, and this is based on a methodology called Living Labs. Living Labs is like a citizen lab. It's a way of doing collaborative experiences with different people. And the particularity of Living Labs is that you design two calls. The first call is meant to be a call for projects where different people submit an idea of something. And then the second call is with the goal of people joining to those projects and collaborate in different ways that they can. So we use this methodology that we have been working with already during several years. And we created this structure in 4 stages. The first stage is for the call for projects, and we call these leaders because also these projects we decided to be addressed to the institutions, because they are the one with more resources to be the leaders, and also with more connection or with more access to the digital heritage. So they submit different projects, and we help them to define them and like write the proposal in a proper way, because some of them didn't know the knowledge about this kind of platforms. Then in the second stage, this is like the structure for the last edition, but we have done this before. The second stage is focused and addressed to collaborators of any kind, also not only individuals, but also, like I said, schools or collectives of people or other kind of organization. And they selected which one of the projects were the most fitting for them, or they also wrote like preferences, interests, profiles, expertise. And with all of this, we did the match between the projects and the collaborators. Then the third stage, I will explain this in more detail, but it's the program itself during 12 weeks with different trainings and mentoring. And then finally, we have like a delivery stage, because we need some outputs and outcomes out of the program, and the teams will prepare these spaces just to be delivered. So when we are talking about the program, we also have a methodology specifically for this part, and it's very related with agile methodologies, like creating sprints, because we celebrate different workshops with different topics. And after every workshop, we provide some questions, open questions, like to leave space for reflection. And every team discuss about that. They decide to design something, they build it and test it. And then when the next workshop comes, they have the opportunity to go over and over again with the same idea. So they don't go straightforward just to building things like randomly, because it's like the temptation at first. But we have learned that we need to design very, very well first what we want to create before starting to go into the building stage. Okay. And during this stage, we have some facilitators, either in the artistic part and either in the technical part, helping with the advances in the projects. So this is just a summary of the different training that we provide during the program, because we have these 4 workshops focused on online citizen participation, collaboration, and literacy. The second one, art through technology. The third one, critical thinking applied to technology. And the fourth, digital footprint on the planet of virtual projects. And we have also asynchronous training, and this is like some learning pills that we pre-recorded and we gave to the participants at the beginning of the program, related with the technical part of the use of the platforms. Like, for example, the types of files that you can find and download and use in the environments, how the licenses work, how you can create a space and facilitate an event inside. Of course, the use of European repository and these topics that you are watching in the screen. And then we have different sessions with the teams. Sometimes they meet independently, sometimes with us, and we have this troubleshooting during all the program when they face different issues. So in short, after every edition of Build with Bits, they have received these tangible benefits, like the workshops, the mentoring, the learning pills, also a participation certificate, also the dissemination by AIDI, but also by Europeana. And of course, you receive this virtual environment you should be proud of and use for other uses in the future. But also I want to put here, highlight other kind of benefits that are like more intangible, because when institutions or participants are joining Build with Bits, this can be useful as an excuse for those kind of projects that maybe are like in the drawer, and you have the idea there in a piece of paper or in a notebook, but you don't have like the chance to test it out. So it's very good for those kind of projects that you want to test in a safe space, a safe environment with other people that can join and help, and you don't have to put all your effort or your resources, because you will receive this collaboration mindset. And it's very good for this kind of ideas that need some boost at the beginning. Also, it's like a learning path, because we are giving this training, but sometimes new issues arise, and when this happens, we also are every time learning with the teams and providing new instructions, new feedback, new training when we see that it's needed, because this is a technology that it's growing and it's evolving every day. So it's something that we are also learning with them. And also, of course, it's a community experience, and we want to put a big focus on this, because people from every edition, they meet together in different channels online, but also in text message. And after every edition, we don't want just this to be over, but create a big community with all the participants. And for example, a lot of participants from previous edition, they participated in the next one. So I think that this is something good, because they this foster like somehow I call it like planned serendipity, because things happen between the participants that we didn't expect, and this is something good because it leads to another ways of collaborating beyond the program. So now I want just to show to you some case studies. This is one from every edition that we have celebrated 4 editions already. So for example, in the first one, we have this teacher called Gina Palumbo. She's one of our biggest fans, I must say, because we are very pleased to have her in every edition. She has repeated year after year. So we are very thankful for that. And in the first edition, she created this virtual space that she called Anatomical Open Air Museum, because the students, she created the space along with her students from the subject of science. And she created like a human body, but exploded with the different parts of the body scattered in the space. And she created different paths of like virtual tours to visit those parts of the body and those organs, with the explanations provided in the space, like a way of understand how the different systems of the body work. So they created something very creative to be the first edition, and very useful as well for educational purposes, and they use it in their own classrooms. Then in the second edition, we have this other teacher, Maria Antonia Brandao from Portugal. She was the teacher of this group of students with some disabilities, and she wanted to create some virtual space dedicated for them to test some like basic movements or basic tasks in a flat, in an apartment. So they created, with the help of these two collaborators, Guillermo and Raúl, they created this like a flat, a house in the virtual world, when they had some tasks like washing the dishes or ironing the clothes or folding the clothes, and for example, also cleaning some stuff. And this was very useful for them, a very beautiful project, because thanks to the virtual space, they had also the possibility to use like VR devices and train themselves in those tasks, so they felt confident when they had to do this task in the real world. So it was very beautiful, a very beautiful project. Then in third edition, we had a lot of projects as well. One of them was this project by Elena Olmedo from the Complutense University in Madrid. And this is an interesting project because even it came from an institution related with education. This was a collaboration with a museum, the Archaeological Museum, also here in Spain. So they worked on this topic of Iberian culture in Spain, and they used a recreation of the Dama de Elche, that is a very famous sculpture here. So it led to another way of interpreting a museum in the virtual world, and specifically from a research group. That is something very important because it had like an academic perspective that we were looking for as well. And finally, we have this other project. This is for the last edition, the current edition, the fourth one. From this was led by Alejandro Capelletti from Argentina, and he decided to create a virtual environment related with digital heritage. And in this case, they chose pieces of art that are not in their original place, like very related with the colonization. In this case, they chose 3 pieces of art coming from Europe that are now in America, like the other way around, and related with the 3 religions that were most dominant in the medieval age here in Spain as well, like the Christianism, Judaism, and Islam. And for example, here it's good to point out that one of the team members is Elena from the last edition. So this is one of the examples of collaborations that are the collaborators that have repeated edition after edition, but in different roles. So the exercise of collective intelligence is something very interesting to watch, because the knowledge that they create all together create like most powerful environments here. These 4 examples are like very different to each other, because we change the thing. We are always evolving the program year after year, because in the first edition it was in 2021, so very related with the pandemics, and we were more focused on creating plain recreations of the real world, not the anatomical museum maybe, but some of them were like very realistic. But then after the second edition, we changed this mind and were more focused on the living lab methodology, with these 2 calls, and allowing like more creativity when the ideas were presented. And then we, in the third edition, we changed the use of just a single platform, that was Mozilla Hubs, for a broader selection of tools. And this was very interesting, because we were moving the scope, like broadening the scope from the hard skills to the soft skills that are more interesting for that. And finally, in this last session, we introduced this thing with the workshops. And these are some statistics and some metrics about the program, but I just want better to highlight the qualitative achievements, because some of the projects had even scientific papers. Some of the things were so motivated that they presented papers, but also they appeared in local press, in different websites, of course, Europeana's website. We also had some space even to meet each other in person in some different workshops. So that's something very beautiful for us, because it creates this kind of community, and also the dissemination that we are looking for the projects. And just to finish, I just wanted to share some key learning after these editions, because For example, we have this like discussion between choosing open or not so open technology, not only for the 3D tools, but also for communication and the organization of the program. And sometimes when we used open tools that were not so user-friendly and were not so well designed, it created some chaos on the participants, and they didn't know how to use it, and this led to not so much engagement. And now we are using like more mainstream tools because this allows the community building that we are looking for. In second place, after the second year, we suffered the shutdown of the platform that we are using. So this may be led as a crisis, a general crisis for the program, but instead we saw this as an opportunity. So we did this change into the soft part, and we started to use the technological mediation as a way to lead the program and not just to create things in the technical part only. And it was very interesting to have this broadening of the scope of the program. And finally, in this last edition, we are very focused on sustainability, not just ecological, but sustainability in terms of, okay, we cannot assure that tomorrow all these platforms will be shut down again, because things like this happen. They are like new technologies. So here, for us, the focus should be like, okay, the virtual space, the virtual environment, it's important, but it's more important the project itself, with all the research, all the designs, all the documentation that they have gathered. So we are now providing like different tips for the participants, for example, to upload the 3D models in different platforms, of taking screenshots and video of the spaces, creating a plain website with the stories, recreating like the same 3D space but in plain text, like creating different ways of save the space and make sure that this can last not forever, but for the longest that they can. So these are like some 3 learnings. We have a lot more, but we are now good in time. So I think that maybe we can leave some space for the questions. And also, I think that Maraca have shared some links. One of them is the website of Build with Bits. And we have 2 extra links. One of them is, if anybody of you want to join for future editions, we have created this form just for you to place some ideas or interest, show of interest, and we will reach out to you in case that we celebrate a 5th edition. That I think that it will be a thing in some months. So we are happy to count on you also to participate. And the second link is because tomorrow we have the final ceremony of the 4th edition. So it's an open ceremony. So if you want to join online, of course, it's at 4 p.m. So you are invited to join as well. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Daniel. Gracias. If you can stop sharing your screen, then all the speakers will be back on screen again. Thank you very much. So if anyone has any questions for either Anne-Sophie or Daniel, please do add those to the chat or Q&A. Anne-Sophie, maybe I'll start with a question for you. You spoke about these kind of liminal heritage items that aren't quite museum items, let's say, or cultural heritage items. And then you also spoke about the kind of opportunities you see for collaboration with cultural heritage institutions. Do you see any challenges in that when those liminal objects become heritage items in that way?
Yes, thank you. I think one of the first challenge, I would say, for some institutions as well, it's to being willing, and I'm speaking for a context which I know well, which is here in Belgium, but it's the willingness also to consider this object as potential heritage goods. And even for the people themselves, I think there is, as I showed, many people own these objects informally, and when you have informal discussion with them, you see that they value this object obviously differently from regular glassware that you can have or other regular furniture. And I think the first thing would be this raising awareness from, I mean, probably for all parties, for all stakeholders, to acknowledge the values behind these objects. Of course, we need to be careful not to fall within, the scope of artification or heritageization of things, because we know it's also not trendy, but there is this propensity for now to make everything heritage. But here I think, and this is also part of the project, I think we have strong argument to say that these objects convey sufficient value to make them eligible to the category of liminal heritage. And what I like, and I think that might be also, it's when I said, I talk about maybe some mindsets. As I said, putting an economic value on some heritage good can be, from an institutional perspective, a little bit not controversial, but annoying. And not having like perfect information on the object, since we know that most academic or cultural institutions are driven by scientific foundation. Of course, it can also be viewed as something different. But the distinction and this idea of liminal heritage bring this on the table is that maybe the standards that we have for official types of heritage may be different for these types of goods, which again are substitute. I mean, if one got broken, okay, it's unfortunate, but as there are multiples, they are produced serially, the impact is of course lower than for more, again, unique type of heritage. So I think the first challenge, and I see, I've already experienced that, is to make people potentially realize, and the knowledge that common people may have, like lay persons. And I heard multiple times also in the field of, I'm from artistry originally, that there is still expert with the knowledge and then the rest of people. And we should not, mix this kind of expertise, this kind of knowledge, which I think, again, in the vein of the Faro Convention, this idea of the state of expert needs to be embroidered, but there is still work to be done in that respect to value that, but not applying the standard of official heritage to this production. That's what I would say could be a main challenge. And also in the development of the app, potentially to be careful of this artificial or reductive application, to really find criteria that fit this kind of cultural goods.
Yes, thank you. I think we have just enough time for a question for Daniel, and also a question from me. Yesterday, we heard about the launch of Twinit 2, the new campaign where 3D models will be made of landmarks maybe across Europe. And many cultural heritage organizations are now working on making their own 3D models of their objects and landmarks as well. What properties or qualities do you think are really relevant for 3D models to have for a project like Build with Bits?
Yeah, I think that we are still exploring that because it depends on the platform. We are discovering this on the run because, first of all, they have to wait not so much because there is a limitation with the capacity of this software to host different 3D models. So I think that would be like the red flag in general for all of them. But this also is very related with accessibility, because I didn't say it before, but some of these platforms are accessible from any browser or maybe from the phone, from devices, mobile phones, or I don't know, tablets or whatever. So depending on how you design the space, this will take longer or not to load when you are entering. So it's like a whole, because it's just the experience that you want to provide. If you want people to be like consuming the space very quick and watching it through the phone, then the 3D asset had to be very simple. Maybe you have to decide the design as cartoonish or more simplified to create another kind of experience. But if you want to create something like very realistic, maybe you should encourage people to join from the computer and have other kind of experience, because some of the participants had some 3D models, like I didn't show it either, but like they had like this chart 3D scanned with a lot of detail, and they exploded the chart virtually, I mean, and the different phases of the chart, they were painted by students, and they mounted everything again in the virtual world. So it has a lot of detail because it's a 3D model with 2D pictures. So if you want to create a good experience, you have to take into account everything that you choose: the licenses, the weight of the 3D files, the size, the format, the software you use, and the interaction that you want to provide within.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there. I think we could probably discuss for many more minutes, but unfortunately, the next session is starting in a few more minutes, and they're literally waiting at the virtual door for us. I can see comments in the chat about your presentations being very insightful and interesting. So thank you very much, Anne-Sophie and Daniel, for your presentations and your projects.